Hello, everyone. Can I ask everyone to please take your seat? We'll be starting in a few minutes. Please take your seat. Yeah, we gotta get started. Can I ask everyone to start taking your seat, please? We will be starting soon. Including the speakers, please take your seat. Well, the room got quiet very fast. Yeah, can I ask you, please take your seat? We'll begin starting very soon. Yeah. The few people in the back still, do you want to take your seat? Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we'll get started. I think there will be a few more people coming in, but we'll get started so that everyone can have some time to network later and get on with your dinner plans. Welcome to the second season of Bridging Borders. This is the second year that we are doing this. And the reason we organize this event is to promote the overseas community that are growing significantly every year. We just finished celebrating 50 years of peace in Vietnam. That's what I'll call it. And really, the first wave of overseas Vietnamese that came back for professional jobs was in the late 90s. So I came back here in 98 to work here in Vietnam. And if you think about it, that was only 3 years removed from the US lifting its embargo on Vietnam. 98 Vietnam was a totally different country than 2025 Vietnam. And I've been fortunate to witness the development, the growth, the change in Vietnam. And I tell my staff this all the time, is that there's never a better place in history to be living, working in Vietnam right now. Okay, so we have a great lineup of speakers, overseas speakers that you may know some of them or all of them. They're prominent overseas Vietnamese who have either left Vietnam when they were very young and grew up overseas, or were actually born overseas and decided to come back to their roots. And I find that amazing. 25 years ago, none of that happened, right? No overseas born Vietnamese would come back, but now I'm seeing more, what I call 2.0 generation of overseas Vietnamese, born overseas, but decide to come to Vietnam, not come back because they were never here, come to Vietnam to work and live. A quick introduction about myself. I'm a Vietnamese Canadian. I left Vietnam when I was 7 years old late 70s after a certain war that you never probably heard of. And grew up in Canada, in Toronto. I came back to work in Vietnam, like I said, in 1998. So that would have been 27 years ago, if my math is right. But in between, I did go back and work in the US and Canada for a few years before coming back here again. And to be honest, I don't know when or if I will leave Vietnam. When I first came back in '98, it was supposed to be a 3-year stay and then go back, but now I'm not sure anymore. I'm a CEO of Incorp Vietnam. We are a business corporate service firm. The easiest way to explain it is that we are combined accounting, tax, legal, and HR firm, okay? So that's the best way to explain it. We help a lot of foreign companies come in, set up, operate in Vietnam. And we are a multinational company all across Asia and the Middle East. All right, so so that's a list of what we do. All right, so I'm pleased to invite our first speaker, none other than Hao Tran. Most of you would have heard of him. Not sure why you wouldn't have heard of him, but Hao Tran runs Vietcetera. And I'd like to invite Hao to come up, and he can tell you all about Vietcetera and how he's really taking off in Vietnam since he came back. Hao, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Jack. Hi, everybody. Oh, you got the clicker here. So thanks, Jack, and thanks, Incorp, and for everyone being here today. So I'm Vietnamese American. I've been in Vietnam for 9 years, and I moved here when I was 23. And a lot of people ask me, how did Vietcetera get started? I think my story is very similar to many of yours, where we might have had a plan, but that plan lasted only just a couple months. And I think that's the general narrative that you'll hear from overseas Vietnamese that have been here for a long time. So in my case, I came to work for a venture capital firm called 500 Startups. They're now called Ascend Ventures. Eddie and Bin, I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of those two before. And I joined them as an analyst, but then upon a couple months of being here, I recognized that there was a lot of stories that were being untold in Vietnam. So everyone from making furniture to making craft chocolate, Maru in this case, was one of the first stories I wrote on Vietcetera, to people that were fashion designers. And for someone like me that came from San Francisco, where everyone worked in FANG, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, it was quite refreshing to meet these really diverse stories and human interest like stories that I had never came across. So that's how Vietcetera got started. It was just a blog. The name, which means Vietnam and so on, we tell stories of all types. It was English only at first and then became bilingual. Today it's primarily in Vietnamese. I forgot what slides I put up actually. So anyways, here's one of mine if you want to connect. So just a little kind of with the crowd here. I'd love to hear from you guys if you can name one global Vietnamese brand. Can anyone raise their hand and maybe share why they picked that name? In the back? Yeah. Okay, why did you pick VinFast? Okay. By the way, they just announced today they're closing the stores. Yeah. They are like doubling down on Southeast Asia and India, I think. So I think that's a great move for them. Everyone I've asked this question to at an event like this will also say VinFast. And what that tells me is that there's a huge opportunity for Vietnamese companies to be that next global brand. It doesn't have to be a car brand or a, you know, like an airline necessarily. Well, Vietnam Airlines, I guess, is global. But what are the next generation of Vietnamese companies that can be that global brand? So for example, when you think of Japan, you think of like Toyota, you think of Pokemon, you think of Hello Kitty and whatever else they've got. Vietnam, we have, to be quite frank, the Vietnam War, we have pho, and we have banh mi. Like 99.9% of Americans will basically point towards those three. And that presents us with a huge opportunity as Vietnamese working at companies here or entrepreneurs. And yeah, my company is designed to share those stories. So if you feel like you know one, or maybe you represent one, or want to be one at some point, we'd love to hear from you. And even my company, Vietcetera, in our own way as a content company, we want to be that voice for Vietnam. So one of my kind of onboarding with new staff is I share them. Our vision is to bring Vietnam to the world and the world to Vietnam. That's been since day one. But it's also to become like the paper of record. We want Vietnamese all around the world, when they think of what's that voice for Vietnam, at least globally speaking, like we can't compete domestically. We're much smaller than, let's say, a VN Express or all these other media companies. But when it comes to the global kind of not just overseas Vietnamese, but even international people, when they're looking into Vietnam, they want to choose us first for content. So anyways, there is a prize. Thank you. I'll give you a t-shirt later. You're welcome. While we're on the slide, any other people want to mention a Vietnamese brand just to get the room going a little bit? Yeah. Pizza 4Ps, yeah, I think they're on track. Pizza 4Ps, the founders, everyone's probably eaten there, right? If you didn't, well, check it out. Started by a Japanese couple. They actually spoke at a couple of our events in the past. They spoke at an event that we hosted in Japan. They spoke at one here in Ho Chi Minh City. They actually use our Ho Chi Minh City event to be like their State of the Union kind of event. Like every year they talk about business updates and all that. And really incredible story. Like they want to IPO by the end of the decade, I think. They're in Vietnam, I think like 30, 40 locations. They're in Cambodia, they're in Japan. They just launched in India, and actually they moved it to India, and they want to have 100 stores in India by the end of the decade. And Masuko, one of the founders, and his wife told me that they're wanting to open a store in the US. Oh, and they're in Indonesia as well. But yeah, the US would be amazing. And I think at their event our event in Japan when they spoke, one of the audience members was like, he kind of came up and just gave a comment and was saying, Masuko-san, even though you're Japanese and you know you own the majority of the company, I see Pizza 4Ps as a Vietnamese brand, and they almost cried on stage. It was pretty incredible to see that. So thank you for your answer. I only have one shirt, but thank you. So in summary, I think there are emerging brands, and the point is, I think there's huge open space for even small companies like my company. We're not big. We have, we're an SME basically, and as long as we can project that voice to the world, that's what drives our purpose. So again, our kind of mission, we want to bring Vietnam to the world to Vietnam. Back in 2016, when we started this company, a lot of people were like, "Oh, how you're going to run out of stories after like a year?" Because the whole content strategy was. It was me and one other person. We basically write 2 articles a week. And because my writing is so basic, I did Q&A style, where Ken's looking at me right now. I'd send Ken like a Q&A list of like 10 questions to be like, yeah, could you type something up? And then I would publish that. And at the end of the article, we'd always say, who should we meet with next? So that kind of built our network very quickly. And people were saying, oh, how are you going to run out of stories after a year? And today we're still never ending. We get emails and messages all day long asking, here's our story. Can you tell the story as well? And that just tells me there's a lot of momentum for entrepreneurship and for people to understand what's going on here. So yeah, that's so. Anyways, one of the points I wanted to make too was people are looking in Vietnam, but it's hard to really understand this place, and hopefully events like this can kind of help. And I actually have no idea if we have more slides. Is that it? Okay, that's it. Do we have Q&A or anything, Jack? I don't know. We can? Okay. Any questions? We're all good? Okay. Oh, you have a question? Okay.
What's the
Scariest moment? Oh.
Something absolutely terrifying.
Okay, that actually relates to ImCorp, not directly, but go hit him up if you need help like this in the future. So you know how in Vietnam, people have like nominees? Like if you're Viet Q, you don't want to put the company under your own name because you can't. Well, so it's actually possible in Vietnam now. It's just either very costly or there's like foreign ownership restrictions. So you have to set up all these like fancy shell companies and, you know, so if you want to know more about that, you can ask me or Jack. But I made a mistake with one of my companies. We did not check all the boxes basically, and there was a time where basically the nominee refused to give back the shares in the company. So it took me 2 months, and luckily it all turned out okay, but for 2 months I was like having night sweats and like can't believe it. So in Vietnam, it's still not the friendliest, I would say, to be very honest with you. Not intentionally. I think they do it with good intentions because they need to protect domestic businesses. But with such large inflows of foreign investment or overseas Vietnamese, that's a big group. I mean, half the group here is from overseas. I do believe that there needs to be more addressing of this problem because, you know, my story, luckily nothing really happened at the end of the day aside from me losing 2 months of sleep. But I've heard other people, like their entire companies would collapse. I heard one story. I was working with my executive coach on this problem. She was a lawyer at Ernst & Young. She had a big Israeli like manufacturing company she represented, and same situation. They built a $100 million factory, and they had a nominee, and you can just see how that ended. But anyways, lots of horror stories as well, but there are ways to protect yourself. And I tell people that want to start companies in Vietnam too, do it right from the very beginning. Don't cut corners, don't do nominee stuff, and among other things. Even like for instance, small businesses or what you would call informal businesses, like you don't have as much corporate governance. I think that's the wrong approach. You should have very good corporate governance because I don't know if you read the news recently, but Vietnam wants to raise 15% more tax revenues. Well, they're going to go after those people. So I think I would always side more on the side of just making everything, you know, compliant, basically. So cool. Yes. So we got a license. It's not the easiest to get, but we got it some time ago. And in Vietnam, basically, you know, just don't be stupid. Like follow the law like you would with any other business. So we do that. But to answer your question more accurately, we basically produce content with very clear guidelines internally. So we never really have that problem because the kind of reviews done are more reactive, not proactively. Like you don't have to create something and then submit it. You can just actually publish it. The law is also not adapted for current state of affairs because social media today it's so easy. But if you want to do like paper, print media, like magazines or newspapers, that you have to send for a review. Yeah, you would have to do that for books if you want to publish a book as well. But in digital media, it's partially because likely the regulators haven't caught up or there's just too much, right? It's more reactive. It's probably because of resources. Like, you know, there's millions of TikTok videos being created a day probably. They can't really, you know, regulate that. So, okay, I'm gonna drop off. If you have any other questions, I'll be in the crowd. Thanks.
Thank you, Hal. Just a reminder to everyone, we'll have a panel discussion later, and then after that, you have an opportunity for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions later on, there'll be opportunity to ask our speaker. And Hal raised a good point. I mean, we help a lot of clients set up operation business in Vietnam. Do it right the first time. Try not to use nominee shareholder if you can't. But if you have to, then use a reputable nominee shareholder, and then there are reputable ones out there. So as a side story, as I mentioned earlier, I first came back to Vietnam to work in 1998. That was a long time ago. And when I first told my parents and my family, my friends back home that, yeah, I'm moving to Vietnam to live and work, and their jaws drop and said, are you crazy? They're going to arrest you when you land at the airport. You know our family, where we came from? We escaped from Vietnam. I mean, you're on the wanted list. But now, when I go back to when I go back to Canada and tell people, yeah, I live and work in Vietnam, say, wow, that's amazing. Help me get over there. I want to get over there. So you see the change, the shift in mindset over 2 or 3 decades. Vietnam is on people's radar now, especially young Vietnamese, overseas Vietnamese professionals, unprofessionals as well. They want to come back. All right, our next speaker, Robert Nguyen, a young, talented startup entrepreneur. I love these young guys. Most people I hang out with now are younger than me, unfortunately. But even the talented ones, I would love my son to hang out with you, to learn so much from you. But Robert, up to you. Please share your story.
Hey friends, nice to meet everyone. Thank you, Ken, for having me. And in Corp, it's been super exciting to come and share my story with the group. I am Robert, or you can call me, let's see if this thing works. Okay, great. Or you can call me by my Vietnamese name. I'm Nguyen Ya Hao, and I'm building Reforge Labs. My story is I'm a Vietnamese American entrepreneur. I came here 4 years ago, and I grew up in Texas on the border of Mexico. And I'd never really thought of coming back to Vietnam. Thinking about this 50-year, just like what Ken was talking about in the beginning, it's been a confusing time for me, honestly. But it's been also really exciting to kind of think about where can we go, not just in this past 50 years, but the next 50 years. The reason why I came back is because I'm excited to bring AI technology in the mindset of Silicon Valley to Vietnam. And so I guess to set the context a little bit, I am building Reforge Labs. It's an AI performance marketing tool, and it's been really exciting. We launched last year, raised $3.9 million, mostly from US investors, Y Combinator, founders of Candy Crush, and other big customers of ours, as well as bring the biggest and brightest minds into our team. We're proudly headquarters in Ho Chi Minh City. And when I think about Ho Chi Minh City, it's an exciting time to build a startup because there's a ton of opportunities that I think people are overlooking. Just a little bit more context about myself. I really started my journey back in Texas when I was thinking about what to do. I had never really thought about Vietnam originally. I had gone on to build out my first program when I was like 8 years old in Dark Basic, a specialized language for building computer games. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I got my first job at Microsoft, ended up going to Google when they poached me to join their strategy team. And I was like, okay, wow, I think I've checked all the parts that my immigrant parents wanted me to do. My parents were so excited, but I didn't feel really fulfilled. I was like, wait, there's something missing here, y'all. I'd spent all this time kind of following what my parents wanted to do, but I wasn't really thinking about what would actually bring me fulfillment. And it wasn't until my late 30s I started thinking about this so much more. That I was like, I'd spent a lot of time working in China. China felt like it was growing super fast when I was there in 2015. I realized actually there's a once in a lifetime moment right here for all of us to build something in Vietnam. And I wanted us to be a place just like what Hao was saying, hey, are we a place that is just known for a war? Are we a place that's known for coffee? I think that one's pretty cool. But I think that our biggest strength is actually in our people. Our people are resilient. They're super, super resourceful. I see this in my parents. Growing up in a nail salon, I remember thinking wow, my parents are doing whatever it takes for us to get to school, get an education. How do I think about my time in the US? Well, I thought of it as a really good training ground, actually. And so after spending my 10 years in big tech, I decided to go and build a business. And for me, I thought that meant going to get my MBA. So I, against all my guidance from my managers, my mentors, I was okay, fine, I'll go get my MBA. Ended up going to Harvard, and was wait, this is how you're supposed to build a business, with all these different frameworks? My parents didn't use any of this when they came to Vietnam, when they came to the US. I saw that as a moment of like, hey, actually, the scrappiness and resourcefulness of my parents is something that I should be spending a lot more of my time on. And so that's how I started my company. And this is some of my team. They're all my old roommates, actually. People say that you need like complementary skills. I actually ended up just working with people that I thought I would work really well with. It was like this moment when I realized like, hey, actually, even if things don't work out, if we had the same mindset, the same values, and the same goals, like we're gonna get there. We're a team, we've been working together for a long time, and that's kind of how we decided to team up. They're all super smart as well. And so I'm a data scientist by training, and I want to look at the numbers for a little bit. These slides will change. Yeah, maybe I'll click right here. Awesome. Cool. And so like, the numbers really excite me. And thanks to Incor for helping me make these slides. I saw it as like, wow, we have a huge growing population of young folks. 32 is the median age in Vietnam. That's 13 years younger than like in the US, 7 years younger than in China. And it feels like China like 20 years ago. There's so many opportunities here. It's just like, how do you uncover those opportunities to actually build something? And I think a lot of people like look at the like surface level and they try to make a quick buck. I see this a lot in my team. But if you look at the goals of the government, the goals of the people, I think that there's a huge, huge opportunity in front of all of us that we really need to take advantage of. The question is how? So the topic today that I was brought in to talk about is building a startup in Vietnam. And so I'll share a couple like the main lessons I have. I won't take up too much of our time because I know that we have a bunch of other great speakers coming up next. But the biggest lesson that I learned was actually like making something people want. And I'll share this like really hard lesson I made when I started my first startup. When I first came to Vietnam 4 years ago, I was trying to build a construction marketplace. We had the idea of like looking at all the like blue-collar workers, like the TUs, the Gongyangs, they have a really tough back-breaking job. They get paid like $480K a day in order to go and lay tiles, cements, paint walls, and they got laid off like randomly whenever these larger like construction companies didn't need them anymore. So was there a way to bring them together? Kind of like an Uber, but for construction. And so we started like working on this with the idea that, hey, if we built this really amazing app, of course they would all use it. Then this famous like Paul Graham quote from Y Combinator really sunk in. It was not something anyone wanted. They had already started using Facebook groups and Zalo groups in order to connect with one another. You see, I didn't realize this, but Facebook is so popular here still that people join Facebook groups in order to find jobs. And they would post like, hey, I'm willing to work for, 400K a day, 600K a day, 700K a day, and these are my skills. And so instead of like fighting against this and trying to build an app, what I realized like a whole 6 months later, I know it's a long time for startup world, was that I could actually just buy these Facebook groups. So I started buying up a bunch of Facebook groups, like 12 of them. I lost a little bit of money on the first like 3 when I didn't know how to look at the analytics on the Facebook profiles, but then I realized you can do a lot of cool analytics once you got deeper into the Facebook API. And the same thing with Zalo groups as well. And so making something that people really want and something that they're already using is a big, big key lesson here in Vietnam that I naively try to fight against as someone that grew up with like US values and US like education. 2, I also realized that when I think about stuff that I learned at the Moonshot Factory. When I was at Google, I started off on our corporate strategy team, helping our CEO, CFO, think through Alphabet's like corporate structuring and allocation. I then moved on to their Moonshot team. This is where I built self-driving cars, advanced cybersecurity, and these like AR, VR head glasses. It was really, really fun actually. But I remember thinking back then, like, we kept on killing these projects that seemingly was impossible. Like, I'll give an example, because it's been a couple years and I'm sure they won't come after me, but we were trying to build a way for us to get from A to B faster. And so the most effective way to do that is probably teleportation. So you would try to teleport something that's like tiny, like a centimeter from here to here. And if you could do that, you can do it a little further and then a little further. And when you figure out that, hey, it's not possible, then you'd kill it and you'd do the next project. At X, the Moonshot Factory, not to be confused with Twitter, they rewarded you when you had failures. They're like, oh wow, Robert, you tried really hard. What were your lessons from failing at teleportation? And shared with the group so that we can use that Moonshot compost for our next project. And they would do this for like a wide range of like projects, and you would get standing ovation for your failure. You would use that then to take some time off, and you could rejoin a new group when you're done, or you could go ahead and start your own new project, your next big crazy idea. And it was fantastic, but I didn't apply that same principle when I was building my own startup. I waited way too long. Like I kept on hitting myself on the head, thinking like, hey, if I made this construction marketplace, people will love it. It's gonna be fantastic. Once we got actual feedback from our customers, we realized that actually that's not what someone wanted, even if we were able to like do all these growth hacks. So by being able to kill stuff faster, by having more compost, that helps with the next venture. And that's kind of what we took as an approach to building our current startup. And then finally, default alive gives you control. This is just a popular saying by otherwise current CEO about, hey, actually, venture funding is great, but it holds you captive to your investors. And so bootstrapping a startup is also something I think about time to time. Happy to talk more about it later. Second, Vietnam is full of amazing talent, like absolutely super smart people. Problem is, I can't recognize them. It's like really hard because I didn't grow up in this system where I can tell like based on which like high school or like which jobs you had, how smart you were. I'm used to like this Western American way of like evaluating candidates. And that made it really hard for us to identify students as first to figure out like how to build the next generation of tech entrepreneurs. Vietnam, I've now found out, has also its own ways of working with talent. Like, I was really excited to actually, Hal was talking about his time at 500 Startups. We took actually one of 500 Startups' first exited founders as our engineer, and he helps us identify engineers I wouldn't be able to find myself. Because I'm used to looking at like the branded stuff that I would look for in the US, which doesn't exist here, right? A lot of the students, though, they have this mindset still of going to look for big brand name firms because that's what their parents want. It's like the safe path. That's what my parents wanted for me. That's what I followed. So it's hard for us to like recruit from startups. Luckily for us, we've been able to partner with like, Fulbright University is a good example. And we've hired 17 students from there. And they've been our best hires. They come in a little bit on the junior side, but building them up and having a talent engine is something I'm really proud of being a part of in this ecosystem. Our folks have exited after like a year to awesome jobs. They've gone on to work for like Shopee or McKinsey or BCG. And at first I was like, oh, darn gosh, they're stealing all of our best folks. But then you realize actually they're an ambassador for your brand too. And I think that if I can go out there and create this talent factory, that would also be something that I'd be really, really proud of sorting out. But the compensation piece is like the biggest gap. I think our smartest and brightest often get poached by these like overseas companies. And so I think you guys might have heard of the Netflix model where they pay top 1% in cash because they know that if they consistently have a benchmark on the upper end of talent, they can match whatever offer folks had. The thing is that I also found out for Vietnam, it's actually closer to that than I thought. Every single time that we wanted to go and compensate our top engineers with equity, we found that the structure to do it was like super difficult. In fact, like I was talking to some of my peers from like the Google local APAC offices moving to Vietnam. The deal was like, hey, we'll cut your salary by 30%. All of your GSUs or Google stock units are going to go and get vested immediately, and then we'll pay you out for that. And that makes it for a really challenging story for like recruiting talent for the long term. And so what that does is that it incentivizes like a lot of our engineers to have like this short-term mindset where they're building with tons of technical debt. And to undo that is just really kind of bringing them in from the beginning with a product mindset. And so I guess I'll just end here as like a shout out to Incorp actually, that building in Vietnam is like building on hard mode. When my parents asked me like, Robert, are you sure you want to go to Vietnam to build your startup? One of my old manager, who was like one of my early angel investors, asked me like, Robert, going to Vietnam means that you're gonna have to build not only in one of the most challenging markets, AI agents, but also in a like country where you're not super 100% fluent, where you don't know the local laws, where everything from like local contracts to setting up a legal entity to getting into the country is difficult. Like why do it? Why put yourself through all this hardship? And I really had no good answer besides like, I actually really want to just make a difference. I'm here because I firmly believe that this is a once in a lifetime generation opportunity to make an impact in Vietnam. And yeah, the legal challenges are there. It's super hard. There are firms that help out with this. I was also very lucky, like, Hal was talking about his nominee issues. Like I used a family member that was a little bit easier that way because I can trust them. But still, like, being able to think through, like, how do you actually build a startup and you weave in all these additional complexities, you would only do this because you firmly believe in this opportunity. So I know there's a panel coming up. I'm super excited, Tammy. But I'll pass on the mic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert. Fantastic story. But I'm not sure if I can trust my family either. Next speaker, we've heard from two entrepreneurs, startups coming to Vietnam, young, smart, talented. Next is corporate professional, ex-Googler in Singapore, moving to Vietnam to join Masan in the world of marketing. Let's hear from Tammy.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you. Can I get some help with the clicker? Can you help click the slide when I ask for help? Because I have a couple of notes here that I want to share with everyone in the spirit of thanking you for your time, and I want to make it as conversational and as helpful and productive for you as possible. Before I get into the slides, just a quick introduction. My name is Tammy Phan. I'm originally from Vietnam, so I would be what you call 1.5 generation. I was born in central Vietnam. I don't know what that sound is. Okay. And my family left for the US when I was super, super young. Grew up classic immigrant background, not with a lot of privilege, both parents working very long hours throughout. And, I just grew up a super, super nerd. I was a bookworm, I looked after siblings, and I think that helped keep me out of a lot of trouble in an otherwise pretty rough neighborhood. And then I got accepted to a couple of good schools, one of which was Stanford, which I ultimately picked because it was in-state, but just far enough from home that I had my independence. And after school, had my fair share of your Silicon Valley startup that failed miserably, but that was the first job out of school. And then I took the safe path. And I'm well beyond college now, where I'm wondering if I should continue to take the safe path. But the safe path basically looked like this. I went into management consulting, got paid decently well, made a lot of slide decks, which you'll see here, a lot of slides later. And I see some nods in the audience as if you're also on that path. What threw me off course, though, was when one of my consulting projects gave me an opportunity to take 50% pay cut to then move out to Asia and to work with nonprofit clients. And my nonprofit client is the International Rescue Committee. And so for anyone who identifies with Vietnamese history and has gone through that immigration process yourself, having the opportunity to work with a nonprofit that works with refugees and immigrants was personally very fulfilling, so much so that it was worth taking that huge pay cut just to come out here to Asia. And once I was out here, I never looked back. I've been in Asia for over 15 years. After my stint in Bangkok, I moved to Singapore through that same consulting firm and have just decided to make Asia home. So I've been in Singapore for about 13 years. I did my MBA at INSEAD there, continued that corporate path, worked at Amex doing corporate deals for them, and then got a call from Google. And the call basically said, hey, we want someone who knows Vietnam, loves Vietnam, and knows how to do deals. Do you think you'd be interested? I was like, yeah, of course. When my son was like 4 months, I'm prepping for these interviews, and luckily got into Google, where I spent then the next 8 years. The first half was really growing our business for Vietnam first, and then Southeast Asia next, structuring a lot of deals for us, channel sales, helping small businesses grow. And then just as I was about to leave Google, I got a call from one of my managers saying, hey, I don't think you should leave yet. I think there's another opportunity for you. There's more you can do here. They're looking for a head of Vietnam. How would you like to do marketing for Google Vietnam? And for someone who admittedly, did not go through the classic marketing discipline and training, I didn't grow up at P&G, I didn't do Unilever. I was like, I don't know if I can do this job. Which, by the way, you should not say in an interview, but I remember that was something close to what I said. And so one lesson I've learned is don't self-sabotage. Don't count yourself out, because I did get the job, and I spent the next 4 years helping grow our brand, lifting the perception amongst consumers as well as government. Really proud of the work that we've done to help train millions of kids on internet safety and many more businesses on how to better grow their solutions with Google. And so then ultimately, why leave? Right? Why leave? And I think this is an answer, a question that you should all ask yourself when you're thinking about your next life pivot or change point. One of the answers is leave if you think you can do something more elsewhere. Leave if you think you contribute something that's beyond the scope of the remit or the environment that you're in. And I get this question a lot. Why did you leave? Why did you leave Singapore? Why did you leave Google? Why come back to Vietnam? And I genuinely believe that choosing to leave a place of comfort once you've outgrown that place to go and serve in a different capacity, to find your next purpose or to find the next way you can contribute is in and of itself the reason to explore and to take that plunge. So I'm a year into my return to Vietnam. I took one of the biggest, craziest plunges ever. I went from working for a huge multinational company, one of the best in the world, to a very Vietnamese and a very good company as well, but a very Vietnamese company. And I think in that journey, I'm still navigating it. It's not totally easy, but it's one of the most daring and courageous and scary things that I've done professionally. So I'm currently the Chief Digital Marketing Officer at Masan. So I work with our brand managers to think about their digital adoption and strategy. But today I'm going to talk to you about things that I also love outside of work as well, which is helping young entrepreneurs, small businesses, startups, thinking about how do they grow great brands. And earlier, Hao did touch on that rare opportunity. If you can build something here and then scale it and take it global, that's a pretty amazing and awesome opportunity to go after. So I'm going to keep the next couple of sessions pretty interactive. I have a couple of slides, all as a way of case studying or showing you some of the brands that I know and love. And because this is a pretty overseas audience, just shout out if you happen to know the brand. I'm going to keep it very conversational. Okay, sound good? Cool. All right, so I'm going to share a couple of case studies for entrepreneurs, starting with some companies that are super hacks. And this is where I'll need your help because I have to hold my notes, okay? All right, first company. Next slide. I'm going to jump right into it. Next slide. Who knows this brand? Hey, who said that? How? You can't play. This is DoorDash, founded in 2013, valued at $30 billion by a bunch of Stanford nerds who built this really crappy website for Palo Alto delivery. But this was their learning. Don't go heavy on tech. Don't build out your tech team. Don't get all super fancy. Start with validating, are people going to want this? And so they built a scrappy website that doesn't even look good, but they started getting orders from restaurants, demand from restaurants who were their early customers. And so the early founding team got into cars and drove around picking up deliveries on behalf of these restaurants to then really put themselves into the shoes of what would then be like their fleet team and their entire business operation. So nowadays, you don't need coding, and you probably all know that you can build a website in just minutes. So I would say if you're looking to prototype or test an idea, get on Gamma, get on Canva, get on UpLaunch, a number of these different like AI solutions. One of them is Unbounce, and then just try to see if you can prototype and put your idea into the wild to get the response before you fully build out. Okay, that's the first learning. Next brand. Anybody know what this brand is? In the Gloss? Yes. Yes. You want to share their story? No, you know the brand. I didn't know about this brand until I saw it in my sister's bathroom, but this is a huge direct-to-consumer beauty brand. And In the Gloss was the blog that started it all, because the founder was a beauty editor and she was noticing there was just a lot of common questions that were coming up through that blog. And so from here, they grew it from first a content destination and then the brand itself. And it's all linked back to what consumers really care about and are asking about. Yeah. So that's a pretty amazing brand, and today it's worth 1.8 billion after being founded in 2014. Okay, next brand. Different one, pretty odd one. This is Kin Euphorics. It's a pretty odd one because it gives you the buzz of being on alcohol without having alcoholic substance in it. And it was founded in 2018, now doing 20 million to 30 million annual revenue. And the reason I have it up here as an example is, for me, the visuals are just beautiful. It's consistent, it's everywhere, it pops, and is super recognizable wherever you place it. And so this is another lesson in terms of marketing, just that beautiful, striking visuals applied very consistently across all of your different touch points, which is what this brand has done very beautifully. And so again, I'm a big Canva fan. The brand kit, if you haven't used that tool yet, is just how you make sure that when you are building up your brand, the colors, the look, the graphics, the font, whatever, is very, very consistent. And as you roll that solution out, or you get other team members or freelancers, whoever, to work with you or for you, that they honor the look and feel of your initial brand so it stays very recognizable. Okay, next one. Does anybody know this brand? Don't answer how. Yes, yes. How do you know? Okay, you're from the US. I love it. I love it. And I think I would have answered to Hal's earlier question, what is a very distinct Vietnamese brand? I would say Nguyen Coffee is actually very, very distinctly Vietnamese. And Syra does an amazing job of telling the Vietnam story, her story, the story of coffee, and her mission to make Robusta beans more accessible. But this has no recognition of the brand because I chose to highlight her because she's building in public. And that's the other thing about great, wonderful brands. They come from passionate founders who have a real story, and these founders are telling that story in public. And so we say build in public to create a movement. So the brand gets as many followers as Sarah herself does. And so the challenge as you get bigger is how do you extricate yourself as the founder from the brand? But a lot of most beautiful brands don't. They do that very intentionally from the very beginning because it gives the brand more purpose and heart and reasons to exist. Okay? And so, yeah, tons of tools to help you do this. If you're telling your brand story, think video first, because that is what really captivates and engage. The occasional posts here and there, for sure, but it's really the videos, the reels, the YouTube shorts, the TikToks, and seeing your brand get lived and being in motion, that's really gonna connect. And so there's tons of video editors out there. One of my favorite is Descript, which Test it out. I'm happy to send these links for anybody who connects with me later, but test out that feature because it helps you generate videos. And then there's another tool called Opus Clip that I've been playing with as well to help you like truncate and make that more suitable for shorter attention spans. Okay, next one. What brand is this? Who said that? Yes, Liquid Death. What do they sell? Water. Liquid Death sells water. It was founded 2017. It's valued at $700 million for selling water. And their advertising is amazing. It's super cheeky, it's edgy. And one of the key commercials that they came out with were of people drinking these aluminum cans of water on the job. Like you got truck drivers drinking these cans and surgeons and whatnot. And the insight here is they really leaned into that personality for the brand, which is very edgy. And in the beginning, they didn't do much advertising. They actually sent these canned waters over to rock bands and influencers and got them really talking about the brand before a lot of paid marketing. I'm gonna go a little bit faster just to make room for the panel. So let's go to the next one. This. Okay, so this is literally called Starface. And Starface is the latest solution for acne stickers. So they took the concept of like kids being embarrassed about acne on your skin and made it super cool to just wear a star on your face when you're having a breakout. And the reason that this did so well in terms of marketing is because it wants so much consumer love. User-generated content is the other great way to get people advocating for your brand. And then you can take all of that UGC content later and turn it into an ad for yourself at very little cost to you. Okay? Onto the note of advertising in the next slide. I would say if you are advertising, definitely use AI as much as possible to try and A/B test and see what kind of permutation of message and creative and targeting is resonating with your demographics, your target customers, before you pour a lot of marketing budget, paid marketing budget behind it. Okay, next slide. Anyone know what brand this is? I'm going to give you a clue. Founded in 1994, valued at $2 billion, and went through a huge rebrand about a little bit 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. Oatly. Oatly. Oatly has been around forever. So has the concept of vegan milk. But Oatly came out and did this in a very, very unique way. And one of that unique way is that it just sounded human. It didn't sound very health-centric or scientific or anything. It just made it sound very human. So my insight here is you can use AI for a lot of your copy now, as long as you're prompting and you're teaching it on how to maintain a certain brand voice and brand identity that's very consistent throughout. Okay. And ChatGPT is good for that. Jasper AI is good for that. So play around with these tools. And last but not least, this is the last slide for me, is there's tons of tools that are at our disposal now. Marketing has never been more fun, it's never been more productive, it's never been more just high potential, and it's because I'm really leaned into the application of AI to help us continue to hone the craft and have a lot of fun in storytelling. So I hope this is helpful and beneficial to you. I'm happy to connect with any other geeky marketers who enjoy great brands, and thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you, Tammy. As a reminder, after the panel discussion, we'll have time for networking as well. We'll also have some prizes to give out at the end of the panel discussion. Thank you, Tammy, again. I've been away for too long. I don't recognize any of those brands. Our next speaker, Annie Vol. Everyone should know Annie Vol. She, from New York, she actually dragged her husband and kids back to Vietnam. It's usually the other way around. The husband dragged the wife and kids to Vietnam. But Annie, let's hear your story about moving your family to Vietnam.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. I might be the worst public speaker here of all the panelists because I need my notes It might be because I just came back from a week in New York, and then the morning after flying in, I drove to. Can you help me click to the next slide, please? I went to Nha Trang, so we just got in yesterday, and so I need my notes to just make sure that I cover everything. And I want to make this as beneficial to everyone as possible as well. Before I get into the topic of my talk today, I'll give a quick introduction about myself. I'm Annie Vo. I was born in Saigon here and lived here for 5.5 years. In 1992, end of 1992, I moved to New York. I moved to the US as a dependent on my mom's student visa. So I flew over to the US. I grew up primarily in New York City. Went to an all-girls private school that Gossip Girls is based on. Yale and then NYU Law School. After graduating from law school and passing the bar, I have to say the New York bar is the second hardest bar, I think, in the US, and I have to give it to Ken over here. He's licensed in California, which is a 3-day bar exam, and New York is just 2, but New York is probably number 2 on that list. After graduating from NYU Law School and the bar, I worked at Debevoise & Plimpton, which is an international law firm, for 5 years, working on major transactions such as IPOs, secondaries, debt offerings, M&A, financing, and as well as other corporate work, regulatory compliance, and the works. I moved back here with my family about 7.5, almost 8 years ago, for what was supposed to be a 1-year gap year while I had my second kid. And that 1-year gap year has since turned into almost 8 years and getting very, very involved in the family businesses here, as well as the community here. After moving back, for the first 6 years, I worked remotely part-time for MetLife, which is a US insurance company, as in-house counsel. Worked on a lot of transactions for them, and as of the past 1.5 years, I also teach business law at Kaiser University, Vietnam, which is an international center of a US-based university. And then, as some of you might know, I also organize and host a lot of events for the Overseas Vietnamese community here in Vietnam. Okay, I think that really does it for my background. For most of my life, I never really considered moving back here and thought I would live my whole life in the US. That's perhaps colored by the older generation's views, but having been here, having come back here, I realized life in Vietnam is extremely vibrant, dynamic, and holds a lot of opportunities. And it's really kept me here this long, and I'm not sure when we're planning to leave. The relocation hasn't been without its challenges, of course. The tips for overcoming these challenges I will share in just a minute. But it has been really fulfilling. As Robert Huynh, one of my fellow speakers, said, the impact that you have here, the difference you can make here, is really rewarding and fulfilling. Okay, so I think that my success here really started when I decided to put down roots. As I said, my initial sort of mental state when I came here was I'll be here for a year, 1.5 years, that's it. Around the 2-year mark, I was still giving the answer, we'll be here for a year, 1.5 years, and I realized maybe I should change my mindset and commit to being here, put down roots, and build a network. And that brings me to my first tip for succeeding in Vietnam. That is to work on improving and building your Vietnamese. It seems quite simple, but it takes a lot of investment. It is difficult, but I think it's worth the time and effort to do so. And my knowledge of Vietnamese has been critical, I believe, in my success here in managing the business, in managing my family business. I've been able to keep a pulse on the business, to understand and communicate directly with my employees, as well as with service providers and business partners as well. So despite the growing popularity of English as a second language here, I think the vast majority of local Vietnamese don't speak English that well and are not very comfortable communicating in Vietnamese. So you're really limiting sort of your realm, your relationships if you're only communicating in English. So in English, you lose a lot of the interpersonal connections and relationships possible. And with Vietnamese, you can cut out the middleman. You can cut out the middleman, maybe like a Vietnamese or VQ manager in communicating with your staff. Year end, I can sit down directly with my staff to speak to them, with your business partners as well and service providers. So only by speaking directly to my staff can I really grasp sort of what's going on, how they feel, what needs to be improved, etc., and their real feelings and concerns. And it also helps me to correct them gently but firmly and communicate sort of the message that I want to get across without the use of an interpreter, a translator, or other middleman. Okay, so the insights that speaking directly to my staff has given me has, for example, informed a lot of HR decisions. And I'll give one example, one concrete example. My dental clinic, Premier Dental, had a receptionist who had been there for a year and a half. And at the end of the, her first year working with us, I sat down with her for a year-end review, and I just, one-on-one, I just asked her, how's it going, what's going on? And by just sitting there, giving her a chance to talk, I learned that she planned to submit her notice of resignation after that. Okay, and if I hadn't had this conversation with her, I think the notice of resignation would have just landed on my desk post that. Surprise, okay? But through this meeting and direct conversation with her, I ascertained her aspirations, and I also learned that her plan was to use all her savings to do a 2-month marketing course, and then find whatever job she can in marketing. And also, using my Vietnamese and speaking directly with her, I was able to counsel her to slow down, maybe find a better way, stay with us and capitalize on her institutional knowledge of the clinic, the staff, the doctors, dental procedures, etc., and give her hand a try, give marketing a try with our clinic, and I'll pay her well, and it's sort of a win-win. So it has informed decisions such as this. Okay. And you don't have to be fluent in Vietnamese to reap the benefits, of course. The benefits start accruing as soon as you learn the first simple greetings, words, numbers. The more you learn, the more beneficial it will be. One other note relating to Vietnamese is learn to type in Vietnamese. So on the computer, in telex, and on your phone as well. And a little anecdotal story is, earlier on when I was managing one of my family businesses, which is a dental supply distribution company, I typed in Vietnamese, but without the accents. And I was sitting there wondering why it took forever for my staff to get back to me. And like 5 or 6 months later, because your staff never really tell you anything that's going on, I found out that they spent 15 to 20 minutes every time I messaged them to figure out what the heck I was asking them to do. So just a very practical tip, and one that has saved a lot of time for my staff and myself, okay? And then one thing that's really helped me in terms of language acquisition, some of you might be taking lessons in VLA or wherever else, VLS, sorry. But the key to language acquisition is immersion. So just throw yourself into the deep end, be out there with Vietnamese locals and also staff, have the conversations or type or do whatever you can in the Vietnamese that you do know, start using it, and just immersion is key. And this is from my learning French as well. Okay, on to my next set of tips or advice for bridging succeeding in business here is how do you bridge the culture gap? I had a bit of a culture shock when I came back, even as a Vietnamese. I mean, I did leave when I was 5.5, but I felt that I was decent in Vietnamese, I was connected to the community, I spent a lot of time with family and the Vietnamese community over in the US. I thought I was okay, but there was still a culture shock, and especially in the working environment. As a lot of folks, probably a number of folks here can attest to, the working culture in Vietnam is very different, okay? And not all bad, okay? For me, I found that things are extremely relational here. And this is a key theme that runs through sort of everything, all the business like doing business here in Vietnam, from your employees to your business partners on the outside. Okay? People avoid confrontation, especially with superiors, like the plague. Okay? The word yeah doesn't mean yes. Okay? It might just mean someone acknowledging that they're listening to you. Okay? So after recognizing and understanding this cultural difference, I had to adapt. And I tried to meld my Western ways, you know, very American too. I'm not shy to speak up. Oh goodness, I'm being told I will do this quickly. Okay, so I had to adapt. Okay, one way for adapting is, given that Vietnamese people don't like to speak up, don't like to raise their hand, and definitely avoid sort of speaking their mind, especially with a superior. I found a way to get around this in managing my family business by trying to, I found that one-on-one meetings works very well. If you ask a question or if you ask for feedback or if you ask anything in a group setting, you're not going to get very useful information, okay? So the only way to get the inside scoop is a low-pressure environment. Don't sit down with your employees just when there's a problem. So try to meet with them periodically, one-on-one, ask a lot of questions. I avoid sharing my opinion before I ask for theirs, because then if you share yours, you're just gonna get your own opinion back, okay? So ask the employee or staff member for their thoughts or their proposal first, before discussing and sharing your opinion with them. Relatedly, Vietnamese culture, but this relationship is very valuable as well because it emphasizes the nghĩa, which I'm not really sure what the translation in English is, but it's like relationship, gratitude, loyalty, and you can kind of use this to your advantage as well. So for example, when correcting an employee, rather than saying, you know, you broke this rule, regulation, process, why didn't you do that? Instead of like citing the rule that they broke, I found one of the effective ways is to say that you're disappointed. You know, maybe you hired them, or you gave them a promotion, or you increased their salary, or something, or you created an opportunity for them, or you forgave something. Anyways, just say that, you know, I had these hopes for you, and you know, I'm disappointed in you, and that cuts deeper than citing something that they violated. Okay, it cuts really deep. There is no clear demarcation between the personal and the professional, so be prepared to and get used to employees crying in your office. I'm sorry, not a lot of employees cry, but they tear up. Yeah, sorry. Hopefully I don't die on here. Yeah, the emotions are very close to the surface, and you know, I give them a tissue. I'm not very good at handling and dealing with other people's emotions, especially in the workplace, but giving them a tissue and giving them a minute to calm down is helpful. Also expect like personal reasons for latenesses or absences. They have to go home, help a sick relative, things like that. So just expect that. But you know, being solicitous of like the employees' families know their family and their personal situation is very helpful in understanding where they're coming from and when these things happen. And it's part of being a good boss here. That being said, I think that you should communicate and emphasize how professionalism is important, and there should be a boundary between sort of professional life and personal life, and that work is something that they've taken on, and that they should manage their personal affairs in a way that doesn't interfere with work. Okay? So building a culture of professionalism here is very useful to getting things done. And then lastly, extend this emphasis on relationships to your business relationships outside of the workplace as well. So in meeting potential business partners or business partners, get to know their families. Do something with them outside. It could be pickleball, it could be badminton, it could be something. Have drinks with them. I don't do that personally, but you can, or you can have someone do it for you, or your spouse, whatever, do something with them outside of the workplace and get to know them personally. Wish them happy birthday, wish them happy new year. These things are really important in Vietnam for some reason, okay? So pay attention and hope this helps. Happy to connect after this.
Thank you, Annie Val. I can certainly relate on knowing Vietnamese. I mean, I left when I was 6 years old. I feel like I spent my entire life learning Vietnamese. It's interesting. I noticed that when I speak Vietnamese and I tell people I'm Vietnamese and there's a slight pronunciation that's wrong, I get laughed at and criticized. But when I tell everyone I'm from Japan and I know I speak Vietnamese, they're impressed because my Vietnamese is so good. So I tell people I'm a foreigner, not a Vietnamese. Anyway, our next and last speaker, the one and only, the YouTuber in Vietnam, Ken Yeung. Ken, please.
Thanks, Jack. All right, who's seen my YouTube channel? Who's subscribed? All right, much better than last year. I think there were only 5 people. So now there's about 6. So I'm improving. And I have to nói tiếng Việt để xin chào anh Lăng. So I am actually going to use my own personal story. I'm only going to speak for 3 minutes because after that you can go watch my YouTube channel. Okay? So I was actually manufactured in Vietnam in 1981 and then exported to the United States in 1983. But somehow the cargo got lost and I was stuck in the Philippines and Malaysia for 3 years. So in 1986, I appeared in the United States. The product was pretty decent, but it was Vietnamese quality. Then I got all these US upgrades. I was educated at UCLA. I got out of the gang-infested areas of Orange County. If anybody grew up in the 80s and 90s in Orange County, there were a lot of gangs. So I got educated at UCLA. Then I went to Golden Gate University. Golden Gate University for my JD MBA. Finished that in San Francisco at Golden Gate. Had a great time, learned a lot, political leanings as well. And then I went back to Orange County to do my LLM in taxation at Chapman, along with studying for the bar. And lo and behold, I'm a little bit different than everybody else. I've actually never worked for a company before. Stupidly, in 2009, I opened up my own law firm called TDL International Law Firm. After that, I realized, and I actually interned in Vietnam. I studied abroad in Thailand. Then I studied abroad in Vietnam, and I worked in Vietnam in 2009 when I opened up the firm. Then I realized I want to be back in Vietnam. So 2013, I came back to Vietnam. So today I'm actually going to share, and I think it could relate to a lot of you, especially if you are a male from the United States, 45 plus, or roughly middle age, about 38, who's not married, you will relate to me, and that is really my customer or client base on YouTube, okay? So I will share 3 of the main reasons why I came to Vietnam. And in Vietnamese, it's based on the 3 T's. One is tiền, which means money. 2 is tình, which means love. And 3 is tương lai, which you can call future or what I call legacy. Okay? So I'm pretty sure many of you can relate to one of the 3, all 3, and I'll tell when I did or did not achieve those 3 things. All right? So in 2013, we opened up the firm here in Vietnam, Young Global. We established a presence, an office. I went back here to open the office. We're a mergers and acquisition and immigration law firm. And I wanted to find love, right? What? One is love for the country, but also to find a spouse, to find my life partner. It took a long time because Vietnam is such a fun place. I'm sure all of you can attest to, but I won't tell any of those stories, except for on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. But first, it's money, right? I think coming back here in 1999, 2003, 2005, there weren't really that many opportunities to make money. And you can say, I'm coming for cultural roots, I can come to learn about my culture, but to be honest, culture runs out of money very fast. So unless if there's an economic driving factor, you can't stay here long term, right? So when I came back 2013, I said, I got to make money. And I believe it's an emerging market, there's opportunities. Let me just ask you, who feels now you can come here and make money? Who feels you can make more money here than you do in your home country? Right? There are economic opportunities, that's the beginning. I'll tell you if I made or not money. So the first thing is money. Second thing is love, right? Because, I was decently successful in the States. I have a law firm, I have staff, I have gas for my car, I had enough, but I wanted to find love. Who here is looking for love? You're lying. Don't even lie to me. Okay. All right, there's one honest man in the group. 2, because part of life is not just about making money, right? Why are you making money? You want to spend it with somebody. You want to spend it on somebody or something, which is your spouse and your children. So anybody who has a kid will understand you're making money for somebody else. And then when you get to a certain level, you can make money for the love of your company, the love of your employees. Okay? So you combine money with love. Okay? And then the final one is your legacy. To be honest, in America, it was great. I make money. I can do the things, the American dream, white picket fence. But I felt that I wanted to do something for Vietnam. Okay? So I just established, I've been here since 2013. My new vision is by the time I'm 50, I'm 44, is to create 500 jobs for Vietnamese people. I'm at about 50 or so. And by the time I'm 60, 5,000 jobs. And by the time I'm 70, 50,000 jobs. So I realized I can combine helping others make money. And it's combined my 3 purposes for coming to Vietnam. So now it's 2025, 12 years later. I have the love of my life, which is my wife and my son. I have a vision for my legacy. I'm creating some jobs. And hopefully I'll have some money as well. And if you can combine all 3, I think you've lived a purposeful life. And that is the main reason I've advised probably 3 to 5 Vietnamese overseas a week, over 1,000. And I identified why they want to come, and I feel those are the 3 main reasons. And who would agree? If you have money, love, and legacy, would you be happy? Who would not be happy? Right? So that's really all you need in life. Right? And if you have that, and you have a goal, and you have a plan, then that's where you would come to Vietnam and be successful. And if you want the actual execution, I have 500 videos on my YouTube channel you can watch for free. And I'm not going to say any more, because if I say more, then you're not going to watch my channel. So thank you very much. My name is Ken Young. We can get to the panel.
Thank you, Ken. Can I ask all the speakers come up to the panel, please? And I'm a happy subscriber for Ken Young YouTube, and I smash the like button every time I watch his clips. All right. I'll start off with a question, and I'll give the audience a chance to ask questions either as well. All right. Hands up if anybody has a plan to return to all of you are U.S. We gotta mix it up next time. Anybody with plans to return to America to live in the next 5 years?
Actually, I would actually not return to America. I'm an American, but actually, if I were to leave Vietnam, I would go to Europe. I would really love to live in Italy,
Right.
right, for various reasons. So if I had to leave Vietnam because of my censorship, I would go to Italy.
Not U.S. either. If we were to leave Vietnam, we would go to Australia, where my husband's from.
That's right.
And it would be because of our kids, not for ourselves, for their education.
Okay. And the three of you stay in Vietnam?
I'll stay in Vietnam. Yeah. I'm here for our next couple of years, 5, 10, until the kids go to college, and then we'll see.
I'm currently based like half in Saigon, half in San Francisco.
Right.
I think for AI right now, SF is still the place to be. I just came back from like a 3-month trip where I flew up most of my team out to the mission. We were across from the OpenAI office and went there every 3 days because I think a lot of the documentation just still isn't there for what we're trying to do. And I think at this point in time, like, it's really exciting to have that AI center in SF, but still build from Ho Chi Minh City. And so I think that balance is something that I'm still trying to find myself right now.
Oh, okay. How?
I'll be in Vietnam. I haven't ruled out the US, but the one thing keeping me from doing that is the time zones, because I always have some businesses going on here, and just like waking up to like a million messages, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even want to think about that. So it will happen likely at some point, not the next 5 years, but I do like the idea of maybe living somewhere else in Asia,
Right.
because my business does a lot of cross-border stuff, so I could justify that. But anyways, Vietnam.
All right. Okay. Open it up to the audience. Anybody has any question for our panelists?
Any specific questions or? All right, cool. So, Y Combinator, Tammy talked about DoorDash and their focus on like building something that people want. That's YC's famous slogan: make something people want. And I was lucky enough to be in one of the few batches that they had in Vietnam. We have about like 8 YC startups here. A lot of them are focused on the same things like fintech, edtech. We were one of the few construction tech companies. And when you think about what is YC, it's an accelerator for startups. They give you about $500,000 and a ton of mentorship. The goal is to place a bunch of different bets into startups, like the ones that are really promising in Vietnam, in order to push them to the global stage. I don't know if there's any specific questions, but I had a great experience, highly recommend it. If anyone wants a referral, just let me know after this.
Great. Thanks. My next question, if there's one advice you want to give to individuals or family back home who are thinking about moving to Vietnam, what advice would that be? Anybody?
So I do this on a daily basis. I would say you should really assess your current earning potential in your home country versus your earning potential in Vietnam, but don't do it as an absolute number. Do it as relative to cost of living and standard of living. For example, if you lived in San Francisco and you made $10,000 a month, it's not very much. But if you lived in Vietnam and you made $7,000 a month with a 20% tax, you will still live a very, very good life, including savings. So I think I would just say calculate it on non-absolute but relative numbers if you're deciding to move to Vietnam, and then you will have a very good kind of a basis for the lifestyle that you want in Vietnam.
Yeah, I can talk through my personal decision to come back to Vietnam. I agree. I think it needs to be first led by what is the professional or the economic opportunity that you want to pursue when you're in the country. I think I've met a few folks who are very brave to say, like, I'm here, I'm going to just figure it out. You can also do that as well, especially if you are solo and you don't have a lot of obligations. In my case, of course, I have 2 young kids, I have a working spouse, and so it becomes a family decision on whether or not we're going to take up this huge life transition and new adventure. As someone who is mother to young kids, I would have to say I've been so pleasantly surprised by the quality of education that I'm seeing here, the number of activities. I agree with Ken, once you have kids, it's like you work just to bring them up and bring them up really well. And so the progress that Vietnam has made me feel so comfortable and confident in the educational offering here, the healthcare offering here, which as a parent is 2 of the top key considerations for moving a whole family overseas.
Thank you, Tammy. The next question for, I guess, for Hal. You're from the generation 2.0. You were born in the U.S., right? I mean, when did you first think about moving to Vietnam, and why? Because Vietnam's totally foreign to you. You didn't weren't born here. You didn't live here at all.
Thanks, Jack. So it was late 2015. I was working at a high-flying startup in San Francisco, and was there for 2 years. Got laid off, but at that time, getting jobs in tech companies in SF were very easy. Actually, everyone was hiring. So in this case, this company was just cutting their burn rate and laid off like 40% of the staff in one day. So like any other San Francisco young person at the time, went looking for work because I needed to pay the rent. Found some opportunities, accepted one, but I took a holiday to Vietnam. And that was my only second time to Vietnam. Before that, I was 18, went with family, didn't see much. This time I was 23, went by myself, and I stayed at an Airbnb in Ho Chi Minh. And this host, he rented private rooms in his house. He's still a very good friend of mine to this day, actually. He and I, well, he basically introduced me to like what life was like in Vietnam. And at the time, before that, I had no concept of that. So he was kind of my guide. To this day, he's a pretty famous YouTuber. His name is Andrew Fraser. And living in that house too was Sunny from the Best Ever Food Review Show. The 3 of us lived in the same house when I eventually moved to Vietnam. But anyways, this guy Andrew, he like showed me what life could be like. And then he was the one that encouraged me to go look for work. So I was just very lucky actually, good timing. 500 startups did a bunch of PR because they were raising their fund. And I saw one of the articles, so I decided to email Bin. He lived in SF at the time. But this is more just like a hustle story. It's like the domain of their company is at 500startups.com, but I didn't know his email, and it wasn't Bin at. Like I tried that, it bounced back. So I tried BT at, Tran at, B at, one of them went through, and then he actually replied. And I remember the day that we were supposed to meet for coffee, I took the day off from work because I was so nervous. I was like, oh, if I could even get 5 more minutes with this guy, like it's worth it. So he does show up, he shows up on time, he doesn't show up early. And then within 20 minutes, I basically asked him for a job and he gave it. So he was like, yeah, we're hiring, well, I'm skipping a lot of details right now, but he was basically like, yeah, you can come out. And so I think 4 weeks later, I moved out. But again, at the time I was 23, didn't have family obligations. I didn't have pressures of like income or something like that. I was able to save money my first 2 years. I had something coming to Vietnam, but I was paid 6.6 million. I remember very clearly my paycheck. That was like apparently the going rate for a junior analyst in Vietnam, which was total BS. I think it was like 10. But anyways, paid me 6.6 million. Wow. And I did that for a year. But I remember the first week I went to Vietnam, I stayed at Eddie Thai's place, and he still lives in Saigon Pearl, I think. And I remember looking out the window from his guest room, and I saw a landmark being constructed. I was like, man, this place is crazy. Like, he saw massive construction cranes, like landmark was still like nothing. The tower wasn't, the foundation was built, but it hadn't topped up yet. But I also recall, like, within the first few weeks, just doing deal flow as a junior analyst was very boring, to be very honest with you, compared to like SF. You're meeting really ambitious, talented people everywhere. But here in Vietnam, it's just the market wasn't big enough. So I remember thinking like, oh, if I'm here for a year, I might as well spend my time doing something a little bit more productive, basically. So I started blogging, and then the blog became Vietcetera. So.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, so I think, it depends on, like, the four of them here, they moved at stages where they had other considerations. But when I was like 22, 23, I didn't have any. I do remember the opportunity cost, though. I was making about $9,000 a month, and then I dropped to 300. And then I remember my parents.
Quite a drop.
My parents were like, well, I didn't tell them the income, right? They were like, oh, where are you working? And I was like, I didn't even tell them the name of the company. I just showed the LinkedIn profiles. And one of them was Ben, who exited for $200 million. And the other guy worked at Yale, or went to Yale and Harvard. And my parents were like, oh, okay. But then when they asked me, I told them I made $6,000 a month. And they're like, $6,000, you're like killing it.
Definitely killing it. Okay. All right, thanks. I think we're going to wrap it up, and we'll give everyone opportunities to network. We have some prizes to give by the way, and can I get the bow up? But first of all, thank you, all our speaker and panelists. Great sharing, great experience. Please network with these people. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, I hope everyone put their business cards here. The grand prize is actually a dinner for two at Bistro and restaurant here in the hotel. But the first two prizes, drinks at Mosaic, right, right, Ken? All right. Thomas Wee. Okay, we'll contact you. V. Tom. All right, we'll contact you. All right, OB, come on up. I'll keep your card, okay? We'll give you drinks at Mosaic. We have 4 vouchers for spa, facial, beauty. I guess all the ladies are interested. Maybe your guys, maybe give it to your girlfriend or your wife. First person, Kim Can. Oops. Tim Burrell. Let me mix it up. Stephen Liu. All right. We'll give you the voucher later. And Dragon Lamb. All right. We'll give you a voucher later. Okay. And for the grand prize, dinner for two at the Bistro. Sophanie Tut. Aini. I think you have to be here. Is that you? All right, come on up. Grand prize. Can you come up to the stage, please? Sophanie, etiquette. Sophanie Tat Aini? Sofani. Congratulations. So just come up, we'll take a picture. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please network.